Thanks for coming on the show today. Could you take a second to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the work that you do?
Yeah, thanks, John, for having me. I have the privilege of being the Director of Learning and Development for American Tire Distributors. In that role, primarily support our sales organization. Also, have the opportunity to do a lot of work with our enterprise teams in leadership development and have the joy of working with our technology. So, do a lot with our learning management system and helping support our organization that way as well.
That's great. How long have you been doing and involved in learning and development?
Learning development about 25 years. So
25
I,
years.
yeah, I started way back in the day. In college, I started a business doing web development and found a job out of college with my father-in-law, actually, with Lockheed Martin, and started doing facilitation for companies like Bank of America. Learned a lot about how to build content, how to facilitate content, and I've been doing it ever since.
That's great. In this day and age, we know that teams are shrinking, demand is getting placed, higher demand is being placed on people in roles like yours, and AI is really disrupting or enhancing, I guess, depending on how you look at it. How has AI impacted your L&D world at American Tire?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think it really started to pick up when I joined American Tire Distributors. So just about 3 years ago, was introduced to one of my first real big tools, 11 Labs, right? So that was a game changer for us at the time because we were doing a lot of content creation and it allowed us to create audio with one voice or to train it to learn a voice and recreate content. Whether it was a senior leader or if we just wanted to not have to take someone into a studio and record, right? But it's an accelerator, like you said. It allowed us to accelerate our process. And then, over the last, I would say, year and a half, as you've seen the explosion of large language models and generative AI tools, ChatGPT, I've watched that grow everywhere, and American Tire is no exclusion of that. How we've used that to accelerate our ability to create content, the instructional design process, using that as a tool. And that's something I'm going to be speaking later this year at a conference about at DevLearn, how to leverage AI to accelerate your instructional design process. So it's been really helpful, especially, as you said, as we are a smaller team.
Yeah. Any sneak peek on some of the things that would help others in this role, like leverage AI in a good way?
Yeah, I think one of the things and more recent things that I've been fascinated with, ChatGPT just rolled out a really cool feature it's basically branch prompting. So you can create a base prompt and it will then let you say, okay, now I want to branch off of that. So if you think about, I'm going to create a business scenario and I have a bunch of information like, social, enterprise background, any data that I want it to be in this kind of tone. I want it to be, diverse in this way. I can
Okay.
have a base prompt that is complex and captures all that. And now it's time for me to do a new prompt. Well, I can say I want to branch off, use all that foundation, and here's the details that I want for this particular scenario based on that. That ability to go quickly into all these different avenues, but hold on to sort of who we are as an organization, what our cultural values are that I've placed in that base prompt. It's just another acceleration from my perspective in using it to do instructional design.
So if I'm understanding this right, that it's like, you've got your core prompt and output, but then based on the audience, so maybe it's a new employee versus a seasoned leader, you can use that branch to tailor the content or the entry point into the info in a way. Is that how I'm understanding it?
Yeah, and I'll be talking about that and showing folks how you can even templatize your branches so that if I'm creating leadership training and I want the branches to be scenarios that talk about, an auto dealer or, a mom and pop tire shop, I can customize my branch prompt. It's going to, again, pull all that base information and it's going to give me a business scenario that's, Mary's tires and what I want to talk about. And in that branch, I might say, I want to talk about coaching in this one. In that branch, I want to talk about listening in this one. and I can tailor what that LLM brings back in its response using all that. So it's a really cool innovation for me, and I think it's something that as you build different base prompts, you can then go, okay, well, this is my base prompt for X, and this is my base prompt for Y, and I can save them in my ChatGPT settings, and I can always go and leverage those. And again, it's just for me, it's how do you do more with less, and if that's less people or less expense on various tools, um, really cool stuff.
How would you have done that without this, without ChatGPT and this opportunity to kind of branch out from a base prompt?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about in the past, maybe I have that base prompt saved somewhere in a Word document. If I go even farther back and I'm Chat GPT, it's like, hey, where's that PowerPoint where we built that course and we had that scenario?
Yeah.
I'd like to use that same thing again. It is just an acceleration of sort of knowledge management in a way, but being able to get to the result faster. And I'll share some results with folks of things that I've done where, the ability to create courses so much faster in hours instead of weeks.
That's great. How do you know if these courses, right? Like pumping them out is quick and it's
Yep.
focused, but how's the engagement? How is this being received by employees and people who are taking these trainings?
Yeah, wonderfully. And I think the reason that it works is because you can take the time when you're generating these prompts, like I said, and you can make it yours. And I tell a story all the time. I worked with an outstanding leader named Stan Soroka, who was our chief customer officer when I was at Hilton Grand Vacations. And when he was a champion for learning and for people in general, right? And we always talk about content because we worked with him all the time. And I tell a story. We were talking to him, and I showed him three pieces of content, and he's like, "That one I don't love. That one's better. This one I really like." And I said, "The one you don't love is the one that we took off the shelf. The one that you think is better, we customized a little. The one that you love is the one that we built that speaks to our values, our people, our story, right?
Yeah.
That's full custom, right? The acceleration here is that full custom is in the prompt. I'm telling it what my company is, the kind of business that we run, the kind of examples that we're looking for. And I know you're a champion for diversity. For example, we are a diverse organization. There are ATD folks all around the country. There are different ethnicities and ages and all of that. Well, I want my scenarios to represent that. I want the person that makes the mistake to not always be one type of person. I want the person that's the leader to be different in every scenario so that there are women, there are older men, there, whoever, ethnicities. So I can build that into my prompt and make sure that that reflects in that. And then people really relate to those scenarios because like, this is who we are. This really is our business.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, representation and even just something as simple as reading a scenario that has some familiarity to who you are. I
Yep.
think that could really increase the engagement a lot. I love that. That's a pretty novel way to use ChatGPT that I haven't come across yet. I'm glad that it's accelerating the work that you're doing.
Yep.
You mentioned kind of like leadership training
Mhm.
in that. What are some of the areas that you try to develop, or what are the skill sets that you try to have your leaders take on?
Yeah. And you'll hear me say this a lot if you're around me long, but I'm a huge believer that a ton of the impact that you have in leadership development starts at the front line, right? The majority of people that have direct reports are, that supervisor manager level, tend to manage the most people, right? And data tells us that those people, and I'm this is for my pro size stuff, those people trust their leaders to get communications and message. They want to hear the messages from their leaders, right? So I truly believe that the most impact I can have in leadership development is to develop them as they move from, I call it from buddy to boss, right? As they move into
Right.
leadership roles for the first time. Um, or, if they're in those roles, continuing to develop them as leaders of people as they move up. And so when I'm thinking about, and it's different. So when you're an individual contributor, I'm still going to develop you, I'm still going to focus on you as a leader because you are a future leader if you're not a people leader today. So I might teach you about personal accountability. Great. You're going to hold yourself accountable. You get your work done. Awesome. Now, as you move into a leadership role, I'm going to teach you about accountability, but it's about the accountability you for your team, right? Being accountable for your team and to your team, right? That's a different message. And that's across the spectrum. We talk about communication, right? What's the right way to communicate to a team? How can you bring empathy? How can you listen to understand? How can you be, all of these things that we look for in leaders. And then I would just add the other thing that I really think is a miss and something that we're working really hard on. The team's doing a great job at American Tire Distributors is what does it mean to be a leader here, right? Lots of times people get promoted into roles or they get brought into a company and it's sort of either assumed that they know how to lead, but more importantly, it's assumed that they know what we do, right? Our culture, our values. So part of, for me, strong leadership development is here's how we get credit cards. Here's how we approve time off. Here's how we it's understanding our process and our system because as most people that are listening or that I'm sure you can relate to, moving into a role in a new company is scary enough, right, for folks. It's even more scary when you're coming into a role and you're going to take leadership of a team of people, right, who have expectations and all those things. What you don't want to do is make mistakes in the little things, right? Like making sure that their PTO gets approved or stuff like that. So leadership development's not just the listening. That's great, all those competencies and skills, but it's also, just helping them know how to do the work of being a leader at your organization.
That's a tough transition. You mentioned, what was it, buddy to boss? Is that what the
Buddy to boss. Yeah, I love that one. Yeah.
that is a huge, first of all, I've never heard it and I love it because that's one of
Okay.
the biggest pain points I think for folks. It seems twofold. So in my experience, as a leadership coach, I work with a lot of emerging leaders, a lot of executive leaders who have gotten into their role being good at a skill set that they really don't use that much in this next role.
Mhm.
And they get really ambiguous direction, like do more of what you've been doing. It's a
Yeah.
lot of what we hear. And then it creates this kind of an internal mental churn as far as like, what do I do? Like, great, I'm glad I got to this level, but
Mhm.
oftentimes I don't even know where to start. What do you have in place to and I don't want you to, expose all of the secret sauce of this program, but what are
Yeah.
some of
Yeah.
those key things that you help people with in identifying the leadership skills from that, hey, I was your buddy on this, up for the last 10 years, and now I'm the one who approves your PTO.
Yeah, I mean, the great book, right? What got you here won't get you there, right? So I think from a buddy to boss perspective, we start with the simple stuff, and this came from my time in hospitality, working with people on the sales floor in timeshare, and oftentimes, a great seller would get promoted, and not exactly the conversation, but it's sort of like, you would go out, you work real hard. They're in early. If you work in timeshare sales, they're in at 6, 7 in the morning. They're doing 2 or 3 tours, and by 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, completely exhausted, and maybe the team goes out and grabs a drink, right? You're not the team anymore. You're the
Mhm.
boss, right? And it's sort of like it's a way to illuminate folks like, oh, and put more practically in business settings all the time. It's like you'll hear people sort of chatter like, John is doing this and so and so is doing that, and you can't be involved in all of that, right? You have a different expectation, and those
Mm.
same people, if you do that, will go, this is kind of weird. This guy, I mean, they never thought about you before, but now you're the boss, right? So expectation is different. How we do that, or how I like to do that in leadership development, um, that's where you talk about things like um, I talk about one-on-ones a lot with leaders 'cause I think it's a place that a lot of people fail. They think one-on-ones are a time to bring a person in and have them tell you what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer one-on-ones are not my time as a leader, they're your time. So, come with things that you want to talk about. My job is to help you, to give you feedback and things like that. Um, and so we talk with our leaders about things like the importance of not canceling your
Mm,
one-on-ones. Take your one-on-one time. It's sacrosanct for them. Like it
right.
shows that you care. It is a trust builder that they are important to you, that your time is not more important than their time, right? So it's those kind of messages that you weave into leadership to say like there's they're looking up to you for guidance and support and direction, and everything you do matters.
Mm. Um, I think that that is a very empathetic, clear-eyed vision of how you operate might impact somebody, and that sits in a spot that maybe people don't, normally see. I imagine that the tire business kind of was mostly male dominated and likely still is, but like you said, it's diversifying. I'm curious,
Sure.
you've mentioned empathy as part of the skill set that you're trying to have leaders show, and learn. And,
Yeah.
in these one-on-ones, I'm sure empathy is part of building that connection.
Yep.
How was that received by the workforce in general? Have you hit any roadblocks or, you know,
Yeah, I mean, over the years, I've definitely seen, you sort of alluded to it, but folks like, people that have been in that role, and maybe they don't have as much patience for or empathy for someone that isn't as good as them. Um, and it's like, listen, everyone's circumstances are different. And if you're doing your job really well and you're communicating effectively and that person is struggling, that's one thing, right? But I think it's important as a leader to make sure that you're always connected, understanding what's going on in their world. Don't compare them to you or anyone else, right? Understand their situation, their circumstances and be empathetic to what's going on with them. Um, as far as, whether it's what the dispersion of, males, females, I think um for me, what I've seen is that um our leaders understand it's a challenging role. Like you said, it's not easy. We ask a lot of our folks. They're traveling quite a bit. And our industry is all over the United States. We've got everything from your small mom and pops that are doing changing tires and oil to larger franchises to dealerships that are like your Fords and stuff like that. And those all bring different nuances. So there's definitely differences in how you manage those teams and expectations. But yeah, the team's really great. I think what I see when I come out of meetings with folks is gratitude for the opportunity to learn and develop. And that's what's exciting for me. That's why I do this.
mm, I love it. So, the embrace of AI and ChatGPT,
Yeah.
you speak of it like it's just no sweat.
Mm.
Something that you just kind of have picked up. A lot of people have a fear or a lack of understanding of it. Um, any tips on how to embrace and leverage AI in other roles that aren't necessarily L&D for folks that might be afraid to dip their toes into it from a work standpoint?
Yeah, I would say, and I joke with people, I am under no illusion that it is easy, and that everyone is converted. And actually, I believe ChatGPT, OpenAI, and Claude both just released reports in the last week about trends on usage. And there was another article I read just the other day that actually adoption is dropping a little bit with AI tools. And I find that fascinating. Um, I don't think that, and in coding specifically, I was reading about how coders are finding that it at times is more work than help. They're having to fix more than it's actually generating effectively, right? So, being a kid of growing up and being one of those kids that born in the 70s and lived through the transition from analog to digital, and where I literally was on a typewriter in middle school and then I'm on a computer in high school. It's a very
Yeah.
interesting transition, right? I sort of think of it the same way, but my wife and I were talking about this on our walk last night. The pace of change is crazy, crazy fast, right? And I think Elliot Mazie, I was watching Brandon Carson posted something. Elliot Mazie did a keynote yesterday and
Okay.
talked about like there are no experts, and it's if someone tells you today, they know what it's going to be in 2 years, they're lying, right? Like they're crazy.
Yeah.
Um, I think what my advice would be is one, I got here not simply. I've probably taken 20 LinkedIn learning courses. I
Oh,
get 2 daily emails from TLDR and from Superhuman that are just AI related content. And I
okay.
choose to take time reading through tons of content because I do believe that, this skill, this knowledge is going to be important in the next 5 to 10 years. Um, and my advice would be just stick your toe in the water, right? And if that's putting Perplexity or ChatGPT on your phone and looking up recipes, whatever that is, or just looking for answers to common questions that you have every day, it's a great way to get started. It's going to get you used to prompting. It's going to help you understand how do I change from the whole metadata searching strategy that I used to use in Google and stuff like that, and even Google's
Yeah.
transition now, right? Um,
Yeah.
how do I ask questions that get me answers? I think that's a great way to get over some of the fear and get comfortable before you start to use it. But I use it for lots, man. It's not just creating content. I've done a lot in the last 6 months using it to do coding, modifying SCORM courses, creating JavaScripts, and just doing sort of what they call vibe coding, but saying, hey, here's my problem. Here's what I've got. How do I get it from here to let it do this other thing? And it's fabulous.
And I'm guessing that you've had some success as opposed to what's coming out in that usage report, that it's actually on some level being more efficient or helping you hurdle or get over a hurdle that possibly you couldn't do by yourself.
Hey, if I was a coder by trade, I'd probably be better at this. But yeah, for a perfect example, I will give in our learning management system, I needed a HTML, CSS notification template, right? I have taught HTML years and years ago. I taught JavaScript, so I understand it. I can look at it; it makes sense to me. But I'm not a programmer, right? And I don't understand all the nuance of everything. So.
But you know
Um,
where you're starting and where you need to get to.
I know where I'm starting when I look at it, and I know what the outcome needs to look like when it's done, right? So, and it's trial and error. And this is one of the things I have my own sort of framework that I follow that I call roadmaps. But I think about how I structure my prompts. And part of my process is that I am iterating constantly with the tool and not afraid to. One of my tricks, share is don't be afraid to, if you get down a path and you're like, I like this, but it's confused. Like ChatGPT is getting confused. Take what you like, close that chat, open a new chat. What that's going to do is get rid of all of its memory that it had been thinking about. And you just say, okay, I got this now. What I want to do is this.
Start
And let
fresh.
it start again and sort of remove the clutter from its mind as
Mhm.
a tool. It works really well, but yeah, does it take me hours to get that code where I want it to be? Yes, but the alternative is that I can't do it at all.
Right. You don't have another team that you can just call to say, hey, do this. And yeah.
So if I can do something in 2 hours that I used to not be able to do, to me, that's not even an accelerator. That's an addition to my skill set
Yeah,
at
that's
this
a big
point.
win. You said you used it for a lot of things. Have you this came up because some of the articles I've been reading is that people have used ChatGPT as therapy, as connection, and then it goes down some rabbit holes where it's like, oh shoot, now there's delusions and people getting like messed up in the head because of the way that they're using ChatGPT. I'm not asking about that, but that's what made it pop into my head. These
Sure.
softer skills, these interpersonal skills, the relating, the leadership, the kind of emotion, intelligence, and relating to people. Are those fair use cases for ChatGPT in the workplace, do you think?
I think they're really interesting use cases, and I'll give you a couple examples. One example, these days, and Microsoft Teams and Zoom and Gong and all these tools now, you can have AI features where it's live transcripting your conversations.
Yeah.
Well, those live transcripts can be one-on-one conversations. Those live transcripts can be, and it'll caveat this here, with approval and awareness. You've told the people you're recording them and you're transcripting them, right? All that. That could be a team meeting. We had an occasion where we were recording a session, and one of the facilitators asked for feedback. And I said, well, that's great. Let's bring that transcript into ChatGPT and have it analyze what is it seeing and hearing and thinking about it. And yes, I read the whole thing and I had my own thoughts, but I'm like, I wonder how close its interpretation of this conversation is to mine.
Yeah. How to do?
And it was fascinating how it came back and it said, for example, it was like, this looks like it was a conversation led by person X that was taken over by person Y at minute 7. And that person Y kept doing this, and person X was trying to, and they were 1,000, ChatGPT was 1,000% correct. It was exactly what happened. And I had to give that feedback to the one facilitator. It's like, listen, you totally hijacked this person's training program. You just talked over everyone and your tone was X but it was fascinating. So that made me think, how can we do that? And I had a conversation with a senior leader recently about think about that from a performance management perspective. Could AI agents be looking at what's going on in performance reviews and highlight areas where maybe we've got challenges or maybe feedback being given is inappropriate or is not correct or is not our values or standards?
Yeah.
Think about that from a talent management perspective. If I'm doing talent reviews, how can I look at all of the things that are happening in my talent sphere and go, okay, well, I actually have a successor I didn't even think about over here because I'm using these agents to parse large data sets.
Yeah.
Um, I think there's a ton of opportunity in the HR realm.
Yeah. This is kind of blowing my mind. I mean, I still feel the need for a human in the loop, right? I mean, you still need to double check
100%.
and see, but when it validates kind of what you see, I feel like almost an opportunity to be a buffer. Like you don't have to be worried about, delivering a harsh message when you're like, hey, we had, the bot analyze this and here's what came back with. How does that land? What do you think? And it's like, delivering the tone message and the overshooting, and it becomes a discussion as opposed to like,
Yeah, well, I mean, you've probably seen this in the success factors, the Workdays, the Oracles in the past. They've tried to do this with performance management where there's sort of like starters for feedback for leaders, like sentence starters that they can use when they're
right,
writing their
yeah,
feedback.
yeah.
Um, Another big use case here that we talk about in leadership sessions is not everyone's good at writing or speaking, right? Or getting the words right. So, use these tools and type up what you're thinking, right? And I'm sure you've done this. I've had this where someone sends me something, and I'm a big believer in the power of pause, right? Take a moment, gather yourself. If you have to walk away, I've written emails 10 times before I've sent them because the first 9 were not acceptable
Yeah,
for
yeah, you gotta
sending,
work through
right?
some stuff. Yeah, yeah.
But understand, right? But that's where these tools and I love Claude as a writer. Claude's one of my favorite like as a writer.
I agree.
But
There's a more nuanced kind of approach to just the actual
s-
writing piece than I've seen in
something cool there, yeah. Like so, go into a Claude and type up what you're thinking, right? And use a temporary chat or something if you don't want it to be saved, and just say, I'm trying to say this. How could I say this with more empathy, or how could I say this, in a more casual way, or whatever that is, and then look at that and you're going to get responses and you can then go, okay, I actually like that. Let me take that and I'll build off of that. Right? I'll make that my own. But again, read every word, check everything because things get wonky at times, but it's a
Right.
start. And I think that's the key.
Yeah. I think that is great advice. You've given me a little bit more guts, I think, to use ChatGPT and large language models to generate some content, so some new approaches to things that I hadn't thought about before. Nick, I really want to thank you for taking the time to kind of share your experience with me and talk about how you're using AI in the L&D space, and I wish we had a lot of leaders like you in this space who
Thank you.
figure out how to do more with less and really keep people centered. It wasn't said directly, but it just seems like you really focused on the experience that your employees are having, and I think that is a great thing. Thanks so much for coming on today.
Thank you, John.